Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm CJ Vogel, joined today by Gerry Hamilton. AP polls out, Jerry. That's what we're here to talk about today. It's, basically like the turn of the calendar to December. Christmas is right around the corner. When the AP poll comes out, that's when it's, right that final stretch for college football coming out. Texas, of course, coming in at number 4. Up there in that top 5, that top 4 area that you would expect, up there with Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas right there. That's a great graphic by Matthew, our fantastic producer there, Jerry. But I'm going to start there before we go into anything else. Number 4, that's where Texas sits. It's the highest ranking we've seen the Longhorns come in on the AP preseason poll since 2009 when they were number 5. What's your initial thought there? You think that, the voters got it right with the top 4, the top 5?
I think preseason, yes. I'm interested to see how many of the top 5 teams in the preseason finish ranked in the top 5, right? There's going to be change. Ohio State and Oregon play each other. Georgia and Texas play each other. Georgia and Bama play each other. So that top 5 won't remain the same. But for Texas, look, it's a great return. Like you said, first time in the top 5 since the I think it was 2010 season, right? Weren't they ranked 5 in 2010 preseason? But this is I did some research, 24th time Texas has been ranked in the top 5 AP poll all time. This is the 9th time since 2000. Obviously, Mac Brown had a hell of a run. 9th time since 2001 season that Texas has been ranked top 5 in the preseason poll. The interesting thing with that is, got to go to my notes. I'm in the car on the way to Dallas to see recruits. The only times of those previous 8 that Texas finished in the top 5 was 09. They were started 2, finished 2. 05 started 2, finished 1. And 2001 started in the top 5 and finished in the top 5. So 3 of 8 times Texas has finished in the top 5 when they began in the top 5 of the preseason poll. So it'll be interesting to see if Texas can make that 4 or 9. When we look at it, CJ, I mean, look, it's a good schedule for Texas to get this thing done this year and remain a top 10 team all the way through the season and potentially a top 5. It so mirrors last year to me. Alabama was ranked higher, but it really mirrors last season for me. If Texas can win at Michigan, that really sets up their whole season in the polls. Because if they win that game, you get a lot of credit for winning on the road against the blue blood team, especially one that won the national title, no matter the changes. You got a lot of run from beating Nick Saban by double digits last year, deservedly so. So that game really sets the tables for so much for Texas. We've talked about playoff scenarios and all that and the room margin for error. But from an AP poll, what we're talking about today, if Texas wins the game against Michigan, barring a slew of injuries this season, they're going to be ranked high all year.
Yeah, 100%. And, even more so when you start looking at that Texas schedule, right? It's Georgia at 1, it's Michigan at 9, Oklahoma 16, A&M 20. Real fun fact before we dive a little bit deeper into the Texas schedule, Jerry, the number 1 team in the country coming in the preseason AP poll the last 20 years, they've only won the national championship twice. That was 2017 Alabama, and that was 2004 USC. So a bit of a curse if you want to go that direction with it. Georgia, of course, playing what looks and appears to be their most difficult schedule in quite some time, starting with Clemson. They got to play Texas. They got to play Alabama, Ole Miss, plenty of others.
Look, Georgia's on the road at 4, 5, and 6 this year. That's a hell of a tough road schedule.
It is, absolutely. Going back to the Texas schedule, because, we've heard it from fans of opposing teams in the SEC. Texas, they got a favorable draw this year, right? And I don't think you can look at the in-season, SEC slate for Texas and deny that wholeheartedly, right? They have some favorable teams coming to Texas. They only have 3 true road games this year as well. But you got to start with number 1, Georgia. Number 9, Michigan on the road as well. So, there's 4 teams in the top 20 Texas will have to face this year in the preseason poll. Initial thoughts, again, on what this entire schedule will look like in terms of who the Longhorns will have to face. And I think I got a good follow-up here with some nice rivals that Texas will be watching from afar as their season progresses as well.
Texas has the of the rivals and counting Texas has the second easiest schedule to me, and easiest is a relative word in the SEC. But what that means is you have upset landmines in your schedule too, which teams aren't ranked in the AP poll. Florida could be a top 25 level team, but their schedule's probably going to say no. It's going to be hard to be unless they beat Miami. Then suddenly their calculus can change this season. But when you look at it, Texas look at the teams that are ranked that they're playing. Michigan, Georgia, A&M. All three of those teams, really good defensive lines. And really good front sevens. Elko being a defensive-minded head coach. And I know A&M lost Edgerrin Cooper, but he's going to have those guys ready. 3 really good defensive fronts. Oklahoma, we'll see how much they improve defensively from 77 overall last year. They'll be better. How much better will they be? The other thing with that schedule I look at, new quarterback Michigan, new quarterback Oklahoma. Obviously, Carson Beck returns for Georgia. We'll see if Connor Weigman's healthy by the last game of the season. In theory, he's a returning starter for A&M, but he's got to make it through a season unscathed. So you look at the Texas schedule, though, and it's also this, CJ. Michigan is going to run the ball and RPO it, right? Georgia's going to lean on the best offensive line in the country when they head to Austin. Oklahoma, we don't quite know what they're going to lean on. Because Jackson Arnold's a first-year starter. What's that new offensive line going to look like? Is he going to be able to get the ball to Nick Anderson, Andrew Anthony, and Deion Burks with the right timing in the right places? Because Oklahoma's not going to run the ball necessarily on you like they could under Bob Stoops at times. And then A&M offensively, what are they going to look like under Colin Klein? I mean, that's going to be a good question. Is it going to be the Colin Klein people watch at Kansas State, or is it going to be a different Colin Klein at A&M? So there's a lot of intrigue and questions to be answered.
Absolutely. And that other big question for A&M right now is who's going to be that number one guy, right, at the wide receiver spot? They have, some weapons returning from a year ago, Moose Muhammad, Noah Thomas, some guys that they are very high on. Who takes that leap into being the bona fide one that, was previously suited by Evan Stewart a year ago? But one schedule specifically stood out to me, and that's Oklahoma's. We've heard all offseason they've got themselves a bit of a gauntlet. They play 6 teams, Jerry, in the top 15. I'll go through them real quick. Number 4, Texas. Number 5, Alabama. Number 6, Ole Miss. So right away, 3 of the top 6 teams in the country are on the Sooners' first schedule going into the SEC. They then play Missouri, which is turning into a bit of a heated, I'll put rivalry in quotes right quick. But that game coming back will have emotions high there. LSU at 13, Tennessee at 15. That's a rude awakening right there for the Sooners.
And it gets ruder. 3 of those are on the road. Texas is neutral. So 3 on the road, 1 neutral, 2 at home of those 6. And you look at that. Oklahoma better be improved defensively because they face Steve Sarkisian, Kalen DeBoer, Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, wants to get that one.
But they're doing that, Jerry, with a young quarterback in a brand new offensive line. That's not an easy thing to do to go
and they only play on half the field and in the passing game. And then Missouri. So look, it's returning quarterback Quinn Ewers, returning quarterback Jalen Milroe, returning quarterback Jackson Dart, returning quarterback Brady Cook. That is a tough schedule. Oklahoma better be improved defensively this year by a decent margin to hold up on that schedule because it's offensive minds, it's returning quarterbacks, and that is a schedule that really tests you because 3 are on the road and 1's neutral.
Of course, talking about A&M as well, we'll pivot that way. They're in the same boat as Texas. They have four teams, that they will face that is currently in the top 25. 2 of which, like Texas, are in the top 10. Obviously, they do play Texas at number 4, so that's one of them. They play number 7, Notre Dame. That'll start off the college football season week 1. College game day will be there. They play Missouri, and they play LSU at 11 and 13, respectively, as well. I don't know. I look at A&M, and I say this schedule certainly lines up much more favorably than Oklahoma. That goes without saying, but on par with some of those other SEC conference schedules where they could certainly have themselves a much better season record-wise because they don't have that true gauntlet. And again, you look at where these games are being played, Jerry. That's the biggest key to A&M's success against these ranked opponents.
They're all at home, and so the key for A&M there is if they beat Notre Dame in Kyle Field to start the year, they're suddenly going to be talked about as a playoff type of team. And if they beat Notre Dame at home, which is a tall task, I believe, even though Notre Dame lost their left tackle, which would have been a first-year starter for the season, look, it's all home games, all home games. When you look at that, Texas is at home, Missouri in Austin, Notre Dame in Austin, right? I mean, so everybody they play, those four, Ole Miss, they're in Austin. They're in College Station. So that is a great place to be in Mike Elko's first year. I mean, you got to remember when Jimbo Fisher took over A&M and they were in the SEC, they had a gauntlet of a schedule. I mean, they're playing Clemson, they're playing Georgia, they're playing Alabama, and they had like 3 of the top 5 teams in the country, and they went to Clemson. They had some really, outside of the non-con, they had some really tough games when Jimbo was hired at A&M, and a lot of those were on the road. So Mike Elko has a really good first-year schedule. Doesn't mean you're not playing good teams, but you're playing all those teams in College Station this year. And if you're Mike Elko, you look at that schedule, say, "Whew, that's a lot better than when I was here as a DC and we were looking at what Jimbo's schedule was."
Yeah, 100% there. I think it's interesting looking at the realignment, the new conferences as well. Who's going to be stacked up with the most difficult schedules? Obviously, the SEC with 9 of the top 20, pretty tough there. You're not going to see many weeks off, and when you do, you better bring it again because you know what the Auburns, some of these Kentuckys can do to teams if they slip up there who are not currently ranked. Jerry, 5 teams from the Big Ten are ranked, 4 of them in the top 9 with Penn State up there, maybe a little high, but Michigan at 9, Ohio State 2, Oregon 3, and Iowa down at 25 to wrap things up. That Iowa defense didn't take any prisoners in that first scrimmage that we heard of as well. So good luck there for the Iowa offense. Might be another long year. 5 teams also from the Big 12, the new look Big 12. And I wanted to ask you about that a little bit. Utah started off at 12 with Cam Rising coming back, but then you see Oklahoma State, Kansas, and Arizona back in that back half of the Big 12. It looks to me, and I've been on record saying this plenty, that Big 12 is going to be pretty fun this year just because you don't know what that parity level will be like. All teams kind of bunched up in that same category of talent and production returning. Anything stand out to you about that Big 12 schedule and how they kind of rank up right now?
Yeah, I believe Deion Sanders plays all of them this year.
And they received 1 vote. They received 1 vote.
I believe Colorado plays every ranked team in the Big 12 this year. I may be off by 1, but I think they do. What'll be so interesting is Oklahoma State has the most starters back in college football, 19 or 20, depending on how many where you count how many games the guy started, right? But 19 or 20, it's the most in college football. If Cam Rising comes back healthy for Utah, most people consider them the favorite over Oklahoma State. Then you have quarterback health questions in the Big 12. What's Jalen Daniels going to do? Then you have Arizona coaching change, right? They had some defensive losses in the portal. They kept some guys, defensive losses, but they have the best pitch and catch combination in college football, arguably, and the former high school teammates that, are studs there at Arizona. So when I look at that, what makes this AP poll great for me is the 12-team playoff, CJ. You see NC State there at 24. And this is why I've said for the people that complain about where college football is, I don't think college football has ever been in a better place. There's some things that have to be navigated, and it'll really be the best when it gets to 16-team playoff. NC State doesn't see themselves as a ranked team this year. If you're the fan base, they see that they're looking at their schedule saying, could we get to the 12-team playoff?
How do we get to 12?
NC State's never had hope before like that. They just haven't. So you look at that, and FSU, Clemson, and Miami are ranked in the ACC, okay? We'll see what FSU's like with the new quarterback. I think it's going to be a big drop-off, change what they do offensively. But you're sitting there in your NC State saying, we actually have a shot.
Yeah.
If we go 10-2 and win the ACC championship game to be in the college football playoff. NC State football fans haven't had hope like that in a long time. And it's the same like with Ole Miss, CJ. It's the same with Ole Miss. They went all in on the portal. They're very smart, knowing the 12-team playoff. Here it is. And Ole Miss fans, what they wanted under their really good teams with Hugh Freeze, they wanted to beat Alabama. They wanted to prove it, right? Now there's something more to that. There's something more to that where if you go 10-2, you're in a college football playoff. You didn't just beat Alabama, have a really good year, and see if you get to then a BCS bowl or whatnot. You actually, a 10-2 season for Ole Miss this year puts them in the college football playoff. So that's the coolest thing about this AP polls. You look around and you say, NC State, man, you got a chance. You didn't have a chance before. Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas, college football playoff. They never had a chance at that before.
I was going to go right that way, right? You know, those teams that maybe surprise some folks, they have their team totals at 5, 6, maybe 7. They start out 5-1 with an upset victory, and you look around and you're like, oh, we have a 17 by our name. We have a chance this year when most folks would have counted us out. I'm right there with you. It's very exciting for the sport. Should be very exciting for a lot of fan bases who, again, just haven't ever put themselves in that position to compete for a playoff or a college football national championship.
Hey, CJ, I got a question for you. If we both had to pick one team that not in the top 20, let's say, that's ranked right now that won't be at the end of the season, who do you go with?
One team right now that's ranked in the top 20 that won't be
in the final. It won't be a top 25 team.
That's good.
It's tough.
What's that?
It's tough.
It is. I've had a lot of questions about LSU. I think there's overall too much talent there for them to have another season like last year defensively. But again, new quarterback. They got a great offensive tackle combination. That's a team I think is a little high for me. Miami's another one where I see, they got a brand new quarterback, maybe too much talent. I think Oklahoma State is a team that's going to exceed expectations. I think that's the team that's going to win the Big 12 this year. And I'm very high on USC. I'm diving back in on the Lincoln Riley hype. I like what they got at quarterback. I think that defensive hire with Coach Lynn coming in to be the defensive coordinator, that's when you see the change. Lincoln finally got rid of his ball and chain and the issues in which kind of held him and that offense back from exceeding expectations and playing to which you expect them to do with the quarterback at the college level. That's a team I'm looking at right now, Jerry, that will be higher. And maybe if everything goes right in that top 12 for the college football playoff, I think they're going to be a top 15 team by the end of the year.
What's interesting to me is LSU. Ed Orgeron and Les Miles, and I think Nick Saban too. I'd have to go back on Saban if we could look that up. I think the last 3 coaches at LSU have won the national title in year 3. I know last 2 have. I don't think that's
that might age really poorly for me if this is going to be the case.
No, well, but look, 12-team playoff. It's going to be harder. You mentioned earlier, 2 of the top 20, last 20 teams to be ranked number 1 have won the national title. It's going to be harder than ever now because it's a 12-team playoff. The other one I think is interesting is Oklahoma. They have the 4 games that are toughies, the 3 road games, and Texas neutral against ranked opponents. If they don't split those, I'm not sure they end up being a top 25 ranked team by the final poll before the playoffs start, because that's a tough schedule.
That is a tough schedule. Again, I'll go through it one more time. They play 6 teams in the top 15 this year, 4 of which not at home. So that's Texas, Alabama.
What are those road games?
I don't have it on the top, but I know that it's not going to be pretty. I don't have it off the top of my head. But
Tennessee's a home game. I know Alabama's a home game, so that's their home game. So they're Texas,
LSU, Missouri, Ole Miss,
all on the road. So look, if they don't clip a couple of those 4, so they either got to beat Texas, LSU, Texas, Missouri, LSU, Missouri. If they don't clip a couple of those games, because they have, they go to Auburn as well. So they have Tennessee and then to Auburn, which Auburn could be a ranked team by the end of the year. So if they don't clip a couple of those neutral road games this year, then I think they may have a tough time being a top 25 team by the last regular season poll.
Yeah, definitely. Is there a team right now, Jerry, that's not ranked that maybe you look at and say they have a great chance to surprise some folks? Maybe in Auburn, maybe Kentucky, a South Carolina, maybe a team that's off the beaten path just a little bit, coming in and surprising.
Auburn doesn't really have the schedule to do it, but Hugh Freeze is a get-it-done coach to me. So year 2, they're going to be better than they were in year 1. And look, they gave Georgia a game, and they gave Alabama all they could handle, and it was kind of a miracle play they lost. That'll haunt them for a long time. But I think they were owed one in that series, honestly. But, that may be a team for me. I don't know if there's anybody, that jumps out to me that I'm thinking Big 12 wise. I mean,
I was going to head that direction a little bit.
I mean, could Texas Tech this year maybe? Could they surprise? Because you have a lot of ranked teams in the Big 12. So if you win a couple of those games, you're going to be, if you're a Texas Tech, you could be ranked. So maybe I think Texas Tech's recruited pretty well. They have experience coming back at quarterback. They have arguably one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in college football. Maybe Tech would be my team.
I like that. I was going to go UCF. KJ Jefferson coming in.
Yeah.
I love their running back situation with RJ Henry.
I agree.
If that's a team that makes the jump ever, they've recruited better than they ever had before. They've done a great job out of the portal. UCF's my team that's outside the top 25 that ends up ranked by the end of the year, even in what I've called a pretty deep Big 12. So, Jerry, that'll wrap it up for today. Again, Texas coming in at number 4 in the 2024 AP preseason poll. Should be a fun year ahead, full of SEC football. Plenty of storylines to follow here as well, and you can find them all on ontexasfootball.com. So come join the community, continue on the conversation, and get all the latest on the team news and recruiting updates from Jerry and I. But that'll do it for today. Happy Monday, everybody, and football is right around the corner. Welcome.